and welcome to Narayana IS Academy. I'm Yogesh Kottawar and I'll be taking up daily news analysis of The Hindu and Indian Express. We'll discuss 5 most important articles from these two newspapers in a comprehensive manner. The first article mentioned on page number 8 of The Hindu. It talks about Bangladesh crisis. Recently, Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina had to resign and flee to India because of the violent protest in Bangladesh. So we will study it as a case study for any other country. The second article mentioned on page number 6 of The Hindu. It talks about eldermen issue. There is a power struggle going on between central government and the Delhi state government. And the recent issue is about the eldermen appointment. And recently Supreme Court has given a judgment on it. So we'll understand it in brief. The next article mentioned on page number 14 of Indian Express. It talks about pyrocumulonimbus clouds. Recently it is in news because of the wildfires that are there in United States of America and Canada. The next article mentioned on page number 13 of Indian Express. It talks about free trade agreement that is going to be there with BIMSTEC. Now here there is a problem that the progress of negotiation is very slow. So the Piyush Goyal, who is Union Commerce Minister, he said that there should be preferential trade agreement instead of free trade agreement. So we'll understand the difference. The last article mentioned on page number 12 of Indian Express talks about Tiger Reserve. Recently, Chhattisgarh government has announced that they are going to notify a new Tiger Reserve for India. After this, we will also discuss some practice questions so that you will have a good idea about what kind of questions can be expected in the examination. So let's get started. So the first article is about the fall of Sheikh Hasina, Prime Minister of Bangladesh. This article is important because Bangladesh is our neighbor. And if you look at the syllabus GS paper 2, it talks about India and its neighborhood relations. So Bangladesh matters, and that's why these protests in Bangladesh also matter to us. Also, we are going to study this issue in a comprehensive manner so that we get an idea about Bangladesh as a case which may happen in any other country. Now look at this previous year question related to Bangladesh. The protest in Shahbag Square in Dhaka in Bangladesh reveal a fundamental split in society between the nationalists and Islamic forces. What is the significance for India? So the protest in 2019 led to this question. So you may expect such question in the mains. Now look at the article. Recently what has happened is that there were some protests going on in Bangladesh. These protests were led by students, and these students were unhappy with a reservation system. Now just like India has a reservation, Bangladesh also has some reservation quota, but it is different. How? There is a reservation of 30% in the government jobs, and this reservation is given to freedom fighters. So those individuals who fought the war of 1971, the war of liberation of Bangladesh, those are given these posts. Now it's a good thing to give reservation, but this reservation was later extended to the children of those freedom fighters. After that, it was extended to the grandchildren of these freedom fighters. And also, who will be considered as freedom fighter, it is left to the government. So there is a chance that government may decide anyone, or maybe a person who is very close to them, who belongs to the same political party to which Sheikh Hasina belongs to. So there is a chance of discrimination, and because of this reservation quota, these students started protesting. This protest demanded resignation of Sheikh Hasina. But Sheikh Hasina said that I'll not resign. Rather, she used force, excessive force against these protesters, eventually leading her to run away from her own country, and now she has come to India. Now, one thing that I want to highlight over here is that it is not just about these protests. This one issue is not the reason behind the fall of Sheikh Hasina. Rather, there are multiple issues going on, and we need to study them so that we have an idea about such situation. It may occur in future with any other country. Now, what are the key factors behind the downfall of Sheikh Hasina? Number one factor is the lack of political legitimacy. Now, what do I mean by legitimacy? If people in a region do not accept you as their king or as their prime minister, then you cannot run the country. You can run the country only when in the eyes of people you have some legitimacy. That legitimacy usually comes from elections, and in case the elections do not take place in a proper manner, there will not be legitimacy. So here what happened is that if you look at the elections of 2018 in the Bangladesh, there were incidents of some irregularities in the election. The election was not much transparent, and we have seen that United States of America time and again criticized Bangladesh government for the same. Also, we have seen that Sheikh Hasina has tried to suppress the voice of opposition party members in Bangladesh. She has put many of the leaders in jail. So if you look at the recent elections also, many of the opposition party leaders were not part of the election. How can you expect the election result to be legitimate if the parties are not even taking part in it? Then we are observing some economic challenge. Sheikh Hasina is very famous for putting Bangladesh on a good economic track. She brought the economy of Bangladesh on a good track. But there are some challenges which are at the global level. The first challenge was the COVID-19 pandemic, and second challenge was the Russia-Ukraine war. These two phenomena actually disrupted the global supply chain. The market got disrupted, leading to very high inflation in many countries. So is the case in Bangladesh. High inflation, when has additional high unemployment rate, then this leads to violent protests. Because if you have a youth population high in number and that youth population is having unemployment, in that case that youth will come to the streets and start protesting. This is what we have seen happening in Bangladesh. Now moving forward, this quota system, this reservation issue was just one of the issue which actually increased this dissatisfaction of these youth or other people. And when Sheikh Hasina used force against these protesters, the public started using force against the government itself. So we are observing some kind of political miscalculation made by Sheikh Hasina. She thought that I can stop these protests through the force, and she did not listen to any kind of demand of these protesters. She even made miscalculation about the strength of opposition parties. She thought that there is no opposition as such. Nobody can stop me. And this miscalculation led her into this big crisis. Now there is some angle of military also. If you look at the role of military, Sheikh Hasina had ordered curfew to be implemented in Bangladesh. But military said that we are not going to enforce this curfew. Military also felt that she is not the legitimate leader, and military wants a new government altogether or the transition of power to be taken place. So here military is right now supporting Muhammad Yunus to form interim government. Muhammad Yunus is a famous person, he's a Nobel laureate, and it is expected that he will form an interim government for this transition of power. Now, these are all the factors behind the downfall of Sheikh Hasina. But now, what are the concerns for the Bangladesh because of this chaotic condition? First is the power vacuum and the issues with the governance. The law and order condition is very pathetic. And in this case, the new interim government will have this challenge of maintaining safety of its citizens. Second, this economic disruption caused by all these matters leads to the problems with textile sectors in Bangladesh. Bangladesh textile sector is very famous. It has a very good contribution to the world market, as well as it has a very good contribution in the GDP of Bangladesh itself. And because of this political instability or law and order issues, you will see that the supply from Bangladesh will be disrupted. So many investments which were supposed to come to Bangladesh will not go to Bangladesh, rather they will go to some other countries, especially India. You can expect that India will get some more orders related to textile sector. Third is there is a potential for Islamic resurgence. Now, if you look at Sheikh Hasina, her party goes for secular policies, whereas the opposition party led by Khalida Zia, she goes for Islamic resurgence. There is a chance that the groups who support radical Islamic ideas such as Taliban, etc., they will come to power or they will have more influence on the governance. And this is a potential threat for Bangladesh as well as India, because we may expect formation of a new Pakistan-like condition in Bangladesh. Now, if you look at things from Indian perspective, first of all, why are we studying about Bangladesh? Is Bangladesh important for us? Yes, Bangladesh is one of the most important countries for India. Why? First of all, the boundary of India with Bangladesh. If you look at India's borders, you will see that the longest border India shares is with only Bangladesh. And whenever you have long border, that means there are chances of security challenges in that region. So from geopolitical and geostrategic perspective, Bangladesh is very important. If you want to take any counter-terrorism activities, then you need cooperation of Bangladesh. For example, whatever happening in Manipur or maybe whatever happening in northeastern part of India. If you want the region to be stable, you need support of Bangladesh. And the entire South Asian stability depends on the stability of Bangladesh. Second, there is economic side to it. For India, Bangladesh is the largest South Asian trading partner. And then, if you look at the northeastern part of India, the development of Northeast depends on the development of Bangladesh because there are many projects, there are many trade and transport links that exist between Bangladesh and the northeastern region of India. So, this will matter to us. Further, cultural and historical links. You look at West Bengal and you look at the Bangladesh, you will observe that culturally these two regions are same. The language is same, people are having close ties. So you cannot expect that you will stay isolated from the events that are happening in Bangladesh. Moving forward, we have some common water resources too. For example, there are river systems like Ganga, Brahmaputra, which are common. We form many barrages, dams and all, and we need cooperation in that. Then there is migration that takes place in this region. The illegal migration of Bangladeshis is a cause of concern in India since a very long time. Also, the regional influence of Bangladesh cannot be just neglected. Because you see, if you are looking at South Asia or even the Southeast Asia, there will be some influence of Bangladesh. So if you want the region to be stable and you want your influence to be there in that region, you should have influence on Bangladesh. Then there are some regional organizations like BIMSTEC, like SAARC, and Bangladesh plays a key role in these organizations. So Bangladesh is important. Now whatever events are taking place in Bangladesh, these will have implications on India. First of all, we have lost a key ally in the form of Sheikh Hasina. She was a key ally because India had a really good relations with Sheikh Hasina. So we took many counter-terrorist operations. We took the bilateral relations to a very high. But now, as the power structure will change, we will have to reassess our foreign policy. Because when in the Afghanistan, Taliban government came to power, instead of Ashraf Ghani, we had to reassess our foreign policy. Similar is the case with Bangladesh now. Also, there are some anti-India militant groups operating in Bangladesh. And if we do not reassess our foreign policy, we do not get aligned with the new government, then there is a chance that these elements may get some patronage in Bangladesh. Further, there are some geopolitical risks. Now, this condition is very good for China or Pakistan to go for some kind of action against India. Now, they look at this situation as a ground for 3.5 frontal attack. There is a saying that a country can go for a war with another country on one front. That is not a difficult thing. But if the war takes place on multiple fronts, for example, on one side there is Pakistan, on other side there is China, both are attacking on the same time. So that is attack on two fronts. In case your Naxals, the Naxals living in India, they also start attacking on the same time, then it is 2.5 frontal attack. And in case Bangladesh also has elements who go for war against India, then it will be a 3.5 frontal attack on India. Can India survive with this attack? That's a questionable thing. So we will have to actually look at what happens in this case. What will be the action of China and Pakistan? There is a chance that China may use this opportunity to go for anti-India actions. Just like we have seen in Sri Lanka and Maldives, China provides them debt, loan, and then the action of the government in those regions becomes anti-India. Then there is a challenge of refugee management. If the violence continues in Bangladesh, there will be many refugees coming back to India. Not coming back, rather they will be coming to India. and we will have to manage those refugees or illegal migrants. There are economic and trade challenges because Bangladesh is important from economic perspective. So whatever investment India has done in Bangladesh, that will be hampered. We have also made some infrastructural initiatives. For example, this Akhora Agartala rail link, Khulna Mongla port rail line, and we have almost made $8 billion investment, and all this investment is at stake right now. So if I have to suggest some solutions, what will be the future prospect or strategies for India? First of all, we need to engage with this interim government. Whoever will be in power, India will have to engage with them. Then we have to monitor the geopolitical shift. That is, what will be Chinese action, what will be Pakistan's action. We have to monitor very keenly. And we have to enhance our border security. Just like we are working on the border development projects in case of Chinese border or in the Pakistani border. Similarly, we have to work on the Bangladeshi border too. Then we have to support economic stability in the region, because if you have good stability in economic terms, you will observe less rise of extremists in that region. Then you can build some inclusive alliances. India can look for alliances in terms of different political factions in Bangladesh. So it's not like there is only one political party that now will be existing in Bangladesh. There will be many parties, there will be many factions. And India can go for some inclusive alliance with all of these. So this is how we can move forward. The next article is about eldermen issue. In recent years, we are observing that there is a power struggle going on between Delhi government and the central government, because there are two different parties operating in these regions. So here we are going to discuss the issue of eldermen appointment. This issue becomes important for us to understand the power of Lieutenant Governor and the eldermen appointment and the federal issues surrounding it. If you look at the syllabus, May's GS paper 2 syllabus talks about issues and challenges pertaining to federal structure. So article becomes important. Now before moving on to the article, look at this previous year question. It says, discuss the essentials of the 69th Constitutional Amendment Act and anomalies, if any, that have led to recent reported conflicts between the elected representatives and the institution of the Lieutenant Governor in the administration of Delhi. Do you think that this will give rise to a new trend in the functioning of the Indian federal politics? So such broader questions can be expected from the theme of federalism. Okay, so let's move on to the article. What has recently happened? Recently, Supreme Court of India has given a judgment. The judgment said that if you want to appoint the eldermen, in that case, Lieutenant Governor of Delhi will have the complete authority. Lieutenant Governor will not need any kind of aid or advice of the Council of Ministers of Delhi. So whether it is Chief Minister or the other ministers, their advice is not mandatory on the Lieutenant Governor, because Lieutenant Governor's power is a statutory duty mentioned in the statute book. This is what Supreme Court has said. But to understand this, we first need to understand what is an elderman. So if you look at the word, it means older plus man. So you're looking at an old man. Usually an old man is considered to be an experienced person, a person who can give you a really good advice. So this term elderman evolved through this experienced person, this line. And historically we have seen that we have been using this term for the head of the tribe or head of the clan. And with time we have observed the kings started using such word for their viceroys, who used to provide some kind of advice to the king. So historically we have seen that this term elderman is being used. With time we have seen that this term is now being used for municipal councils or municipal corporations. So if there is a local body at the urban level, in that body if there is an officer in charge, he is usually termed as elderman. Now specifically if we talk about India and if we talk about Delhi, so there is a municipal corporation of Delhi and there is an act called Delhi Municipal Corporation Act 1957, which provides the powers and functions related to the functionaries of Delhi Municipal Corporation. Now, here in this municipal corporation, there are few members who get elected who get directly elected, and there are few members who are nominated. So just like Rajya Sabha, there are some nominated and some elected members. So here if we look at these nominated members, these members are termed as aldermen, especially when it comes to Delhi Municipal Corporation Act. So what happens usually, we divide Delhi into total 12 zones. Each zone will have their ward committees. And from these ward committees, some members will be elected and some members will be nominated. But who will nominate these members? This act specifically mentions that the nomination will be done by Lieutenant Governor of Delhi. And these members should be having at least the age criteria of 25. And because they are termed as aldermen, that means they are expected to be persons with special knowledge or person with experience. These people are expected to provide advice for really good decision making when it comes to municipal administration. So they are going to be very important source for the administration of municipal corporation. Now here, these people, they do not directly vote in the MCD meetings. They do not even vote in the mayoral elections. But what they will do is that they will be part of the standing committee. Now, usually whenever a standing committee is formed for a specific purpose, every member will play a very key role. And these aldermen can actually stand for the election of these committees. They can vote in these committees. So their role is very crucial. Now moving forward, what is the contention? Why the case moved to the Supreme Court? So first of all, Delhi government said that there is Article 239AA in the Constitution of India. It clearly says that if Lieutenant Governor of Delhi has to take any decision, the aid and advice of the Chief Minister and the Council of Ministers is mandatory on the LG. But in which case, whenever there is an issue which is mentioned in the state list or issue which is mentioned in the concurrent list. So in that case, aid and advice is mandatory. But there is some discretionary power given to the LG. Discretionary means he can use his reasoning, his mind and decide on the issue. He doesn't need any advice as such. There is no advice binding on him. Such discretionary power is given only in few cases. Cases which involve public order, police and land. In these cases, LG will have complete authority. Now, Delhi government said that if you look at the Supreme Court judgment of 2018, that judgment also mentioned the same thing. And here comes the point wherein we are looking at the state subject. Municipal administration is considered as part of the state subject, and that is why it should be obligatory on LG to take the aid and advice of the Council of Ministers. Now this is the side of Delhi government. But if you look at the side of Lieutenant Governor, he argued that look at this Delhi Municipal Corporation Act of 1957, and this statute specifically mentions that I don't need any aid and advice as such. So that's why these two individuals or these two parties reached out to the Supreme Court. Now because this has become a federal issue, whenever there is a state and a central party in that case that will be solved only by the Supreme Court. Supreme Court rejected Delhi government's argument, and in the favor of the LG, Supreme Court said that it is the LG statutory duty, so no aid and advice is required. Now there will be broad implications of this judgment. First of all, already Delhi has a very special or very unique status. If you compare Delhi with any other union territory, because any other union territory will be having power structure of such a kind that the power will be concentrated in the hand of center. But in case of Delhi, there is legislative assembly, there is council of minister. So it is relatively more democratic. But here what you are saying is that the power is again shifted towards the center. So we can say the autonomy is being reduced to some extent. Second, there is problem with the governance. How? If you are appointing aldermen, if LG appoints aldermen and the governance is taken care of by the Council of Ministers or the Chief Minister, so there is a chance whenever these committees are operating, especially these standing committees, there is a chance of friction between these members or friction between the Council of Ministers and the members of standing committee. So how can you ensure good governance if there is so much friction? So Again, moving forward with this historical context, look at this idea also. This 69th Amendment of 1991, that had brought this amendment bringing 239 AA. The reason behind bringing this particular article was to bring a balance between the power of central government and the power of Delhi government. But now, this balance has got shifted towards the center with the judgment of Supreme Court. So what we can conclude with this is that this issue is very complex, a very debatable issue. And if you want clarity on this issue, first of all, you need to provide some clearer definitions in legal terms about the governance model of Delhi. And we need some reforms in this case. Without these reforms, we cannot expect the model to run swiftly and in a more democratic way. The next article is about pyrocumulonimbus clouds. In recent times, we are observing that United States of America and Canada are experiencing intense wildfires. And because of these wildfires, a new phenomena is being observed in the atmosphere that is termed as pyrocumulonimbus cloud formation. So what are these clouds? Because in the static syllabus of geography, we anyway study about the climate and different forms of clouds and also the wildfires. So from syllabus perspective, GS paper 1 talks about geophysical phenomena, GS paper 3 talks about environmental conservation. So topic is important. Look at this previous year question. It says, in the context of which of the following do some scientists suggest the use of cirrus cloud thinning technique and the ingestion of sulfate aerosol into stratosphere? First, creating the artificial rains in some regions, reducing the frequency and intensity of tropical cyclones, reducing the adverse effects of solar wind on the earth, and last, reducing the global warming. To answer such questions, you should have a good idea about such phenomena. Now look at this pyrocumulonimbus clouds. Normally what happens is that the cloud formation takes place due to the phenomena of convection. Usually we observe that in a particular region, if that region gets heated up, when it gets heated up, the surrounding air becomes warm and that air then goes upward. When it goes upward, here in this region, it starts condensing. So you observe that the warm air now becomes cool and this condensation leads to the formation of clouds. And the same clouds, when they become heavier because of the water vapor. These clouds then come back to the surface area in the form of rainfall. This is the normal phenomena we observe. Now here the role of water vapor is very important because this is the water vapor that is getting condensed and this is happening because of the phenomena of convection. Now in case of pyrocumulonimbus clouds, the specific region is getting heated but in a very intense form. Just imagine if there is a region where you are observing some kind of wildfire or you are observing some kind of volcanic eruption. You can imagine there will be intense heating of that region. So here, apart from water vapor, there will also be some smoke and there will be some kind of ash. So this smoke, ash and water vapor all will move upward. After reaching this upward stage, when the water vapor starts condensing, it will actually condense around this ash. And because of this, the clouds that you will observe will be little bit browny in color. Now there is a difference. Normal cloud which gets formed, which is termed as cumulonimbus cloud, is usually having the ability to provide dense or heavy rainfall. But in case of these pyrocumulonimbus clouds, there will not be much rainfall, rather there will be much lightning. So what you will observe is that if the wildfire started in one region and now the clouds are getting formed, they become more intense and there will be expansion of these clouds. And now there will be lightning in a different region altogether. And because of that lightning, you will see a new wildfire incident. So what we are saying is that one wildfire in one region will lead to another wildfire in a far away another region, and there is no relation of these two regions. And this will lead to more frequent wildfires. That's why we are saying this pyrocumulonimbus cloud formation is a very dangerous and disastrous phenomena. Now, if you look at the frequency of these cloud formation, especially in Canada, then we observed that before 2023, there were only 50 such cloud formations recorded in Canada. In the entire globe, this number was around 102. But now, after 2023, or rather in the year 2023, just in the country of Canada, we are observing 140 such incidents. That means the frequency of such cloud formation is increasing, and this is causing tension in the minds of public living in that region. So here's scientists are trying to study why this phenomena is getting increased, why the frequency is increasing. Scientists are thinking about the phenomena of climate change. Is there any link of climate change with the formation of pyrocumulonimbus clouds? So we still do not have any such study claiming that there is relation. So we will wait for any such insights or any such conclusions. The next article is about BIMSTEC grouping. Recently, Union Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal said that the BIMSTEC group, who is trying to bring a free trade agreement since few years, we are negotiating a free trade agreement, but the pace of this negotiation is very slow. And he said that instead of FTA, we should go for a preferential trade agreement, that is PTA. So in this article, we'll understand what is PTA, what is FTA, and what is this BIMSTEC. And from syllabus perspective, GS paper 2 mentions about regional groupings, BIMSTEC being important. Now look at this previous year question. It says, Broad-Based Trade and Investment Agreement, BTIA, is sometimes seen in news in the context of negotiations held between India and European Union, Gulf Cooperation Council, Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, or Shanghai Cooperation Organization. So it's an easy question, but to answer such questions, you need a good understanding of the news. Now look at this news. Piyush Goyal said that we should go for preferential trade agreement with BIMSTEC. So first of all, what is BIMSTEC? So the name itself says Bay of Bengal Initiative for Multi-Sectoral Technical and Economic Cooperation. Now please understand, it is just like any other grouping. So here in the map you see there are total 7 members mentioned. And all these members are forming a grouping which focuses on 2 different dimensions. One is the technical one, other one is the economic one. So they are saying we will form a group which will focus only on these 2 dimensions. Usually any group forms, they don't have a fixed set of sector. They rather go for many sectors. For example, a group will say we will cooperate in security, will cooperate in cultural part, many other things. But here we have specifically mentioned. That means it is going to be a very targeted group. There is a chance of success with such groups. This group was formed in 1997 with the Bangkok Declaration. And this group includes total 7 members. You can remember the name of these members with a mnemonic. You can say, you remove this EC part and say B is Bangladesh, I for India, M for Myanmar, S for Sri Lanka, T for Thailand. And instead of this EC, you can talk about Nepal and Bhutan. Also, there's one more fact about it, that all other countries, they were founding members, but Nepal and Bhutan, they were not founding members. They joined this grouping in the year 2004. The headquarters of this BIMSTEC grouping is in Dhaka, that is Bangladesh. And the chairmanship of this grouping keeps on rotating. This year it will be with one country, next year it will be with another country. This year it is with Thailand. Now moving ahead. If you look at the features or the importance of this grouping, so you see that if you compare it with the world population, it comprises of total 22% of world population. That means it is a substantial one. Secondly, if you look at the combined GDP of BIMSTEC countries, it is somewhere around $3.6 trillion. That is also important. Then it is sector driven. We already talked about it. Now, if you look at India's Act East policy, it aligns with BIMSTEC. The countries which are there in BIMSTEC, they are part of India's Act East policy anyway. So we can say there is some relation. Now, we are talking about FTA and PTA. What is the basic difference? When we say we are going for a free trade agreement with any country, what you will try is that you will go for reducing the tariffs. Tariff means the taxes that you put on any other country. You will reduce the tariffs to such an extent that there will be free transport of goods and services. For example, if a good is manufactured in India, it can move to Thailand and you will not be having any additional taxes or tariffs on these products. So FTA will try to include many goods, many services, even intellectual properties, etc. It will be very broad and it will be very complex too, because you need to make some laws in both countries. Those laws will be very stringent, and that's why this FTA will be very much complex. The examples of FTA are India-Sri Lanka FTA, India-ASEAN FTA, this SAFTA, South Asian Free Trade Agreement, etc. Now, if you look at PTA, Preferential Trade Agreement, we can say that if we are building some steps and here it is FTA, then the first step would be considered as PTA. How we are saying that? We are saying instead of a comprehensive agreement, if we make a selective agreement which includes only some selective goods or some selective services, then that can be considered as Preferential Trade Agreement. So two countries will say that on some goods we will have less tariff or maybe zero tariff. Examples of such PTA include India-Mercosur PTA, India-SAARC Preferential Trading Arrangement, and then India-Afghanistan PTA. So such is the difference we need to know. So the next article is about Tiger Reserve. Recently, Chhattisgarh government has notified a new Tiger Reserve. So we need to study about it. We need to know what are these tiger reserves and what is this National Tiger Conservation Authority. This becomes important for prelims as well as mains GS paper 3 biodiversity and conservation part. Look at this previous year question, which is very factual. It says, which of the following are in the Agastya Malai Biosphere Reserve? And all the list of tiger reserve and wildlife sanctuaries is given. You can expect such factual questions in the examination. Okay? Moving ahead with the context. The context is Government of Chhattisgarh has notified this new tiger reserve named Guru Ghasidas Tamor Pingla Tiger Reserve. Now this tiger reserve is very important because it is going to be the third largest tiger reserve in India. If you look at all the tiger reserves in India, number one is Nagarjun Sagar Srisailam Tiger Reserve, which is in the state of Andhra Pradesh and Telangana, spread over 3,700 square kilometers. At second number, Simplipal Tiger Reserve, which is in the state of Odisha. And third will be this Guru Ghasidas Tamor Pingla Tiger Reserve in Chhattisgarh. If you look at Chhattisgarh specifically, already there are 3 tiger reserves in Chhattisgarh and this is going to be the 4th one. Okay? Moving forward, how are tiger reserves notified? Who is the authority? The role of state government is very important in this and there is no such role of central government directly. What happens is that we have Wildlife Protection Act 1972. In this act, section 38 clause 5 provides this provision that state government will be notifying a tiger reserve. But state government cannot do it on its own. It needs recommendation of a body called NTCA. This body is National Tiger Conservation Authority. Now what is the phenomena or the process? First, state government will propose a name to the NTCA. NTCA will go through it and then NTCA will recommend whether to notify it or not. Once recommended, then state government will notify it. And all this is happening through this particular act. Now, in case you want to make any changes, for example, initially a state government notified a tiger reserve and now they want to denotify or cancel it out. Or maybe they want to change the area. They want to increase the area or reduce the area. In that case, state government cannot do it on its own. Rather, again it needs approval from NTCA. But not just NTCA, it also requires approval from National Board for Wildlife. If these two bodies approve, then you can denotify or make any kind of changes as your wish. Then if you look at this National Tiger Conservation Authority, this body was formed under this Wildlife Protection Act of 1972 and this body operates under the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. Now if you look at the composition, the Union Minister of this Ministry of Environment and Forest is the chairperson of this body, and the vice chairperson is the Minister of State in the Ministry of Environment and Forest. There will be other members also, other member of parliaments, the secretary and all, they will also be part of NTCA. Now this NTCA was initially formed to implement Project Tiger. So the main authority, apex body to implement Project Tiger is NTCA. And whenever you want to implement this Project Tiger in any state, you need to ensure that center-state relation is maintained in a good way. And NTCA will ensure this management. Here NTCA will also have oversight of Parliament. Parliament may question NTCA because there are member of parliaments and ministers involved in this. Also, NTCA will take care of livelihood interests of the local tribal people who live in these tiger reserves. So all this is taken care of. Now let's look at some of the practice questions. Question number 1. It says, consider the following statements. First, aldermen are elected by the public and have voting rights in all MCD meetings. Absolutely wrong statement. They don't have voting right in all MCD meetings as such. Second, they are appointed by the mayor and have no voting rights. They are not appointed by mayor as such. Aldermen are nominated by lieutenant governor and play a crucial role in ward committees but do not vote in MCD general meetings. That's the right statement. Fourth, aldermen are nominated by chief minister. No, absolutely wrong. So only 3 is the right statement. So option B is the right answer. Next question. Which of the following countries is not a member of BIMSTEC? Bangladesh, Bhutan, Maldives, Myanmar. Factual question. You must know that Maldives is not part of BIMSTEC as such. Next question. Which of the following agreements is more comprehensive and involves the elimination of tariffs on a wide range of goods and services between member countries? We have already discussed this. The answer is FTA, that is Free Trade Agreement. Next question. With reference to tiger reserves in India, consider the following statements. First, tiger reserves are notified by state governments. Yes, on the advice of National Tiger Conservation Authority. Absolutely correct. Second, approval of the National Board for Wildlife is necessary to alter the boundaries of tiger reserve. This is also correct. Rather, NTCA as well as National Board of Wildlife, approval from these agencies is a must. So second statement is also correct. So answer is C, both 1 and 2. Now next question is, which of the following statements correctly describes the difference between cumulonimbus clouds and pyrocumulonimbus clouds? First, cumulonimbus clouds are primarily driven by intense heat from wildfires or volcanic eruptions, while pyrocumulonimbus clouds form due to atmospheric instability and convection. Please look at this thing. They have reversed the statement. The statement for cumulonimbus is absolutely wrong and pyro also absolutely wrong because they have reversed it. Second, both cumulonimbus and pyrocumulonimbus clouds can reach great heights and produce thunderstorms. Obviously, cloud formation takes place, thunderstorm takes place. We talked about this phenomena that lightning will be there. So second statement is right. Now next question. What is the importance of Bangladesh for India? Discuss the implications of Sheikh Hasina's resignation on India-Bangladesh relations. It's a 15-marker question. Now, if you want to answer such questions, you have to directly jump to the core points of the question. They have asked about importance of Bangladesh. Then from the introduction itself, talk about the importance. So you can talk about the strategic importance. You can talk about the border region. You can talk about cultural significance of Bangladesh. And you can also say geopolitically, geoeconomically, and geostrategically. From all these angles, Bangladesh seems important. You can quote some data also. You can talk about the length of the border and all, or the trade that India has. Everything can be mentioned in the intro part itself. Then moving ahead, we are going to talk about implication of Sheikh Hasina's resignations. So here implications would be in first geopolitical form. So you can mention about the role of China and Pakistan in this. To some extent, you can even talk about USA's role, although it is not explicitly mentioned as such. Then you can talk about the economic angle. We already have investments with Bangladesh. Those investments will be at stake. You can talk about it. And you can talk about these infrastructural projects also. Okay, then moving forward, you can talk about strategic and cultural aspects. Cultural, you can talk about the cultural aspects that are there in West Bengal and that with Bangladesh. You can talk about the migrations taking place, and you can eventually reach out to the shift in the relations. Just like our relations have changed with the Afghan government with the fall of Ashraf Ghani, similar is the case with Bangladesh. So you can talk about it. And when you are concluding, provide some way forward. Give some solutions what the government should go for. Government should go for some strategic approach. Government can go for some balancing. This you can mention at the end. So this is all about the daily news analysis for today. If you want more updates, please like, share and subscribe to the YouTube channel of Narayana IS Academy. Thank you.